do this for the Lord, dog. It's all about the legacy. Yeah, we live that by life, last of a dying breed. And we throw a bread, you could tell from our pedigree. Bring your dog for trainer, but we treat him on like therapy. We do this for the Lord, dog. It's all about the legacy. It go. It's by life to the afterlife. It's by life, ayy. Yeah, we live that by life, last of a dying breed. And we throw a bread, you could tell from our pedigree. Bring your dog for training, but we treat him on like therapy. We do this for the Lord, dog. It's all about the legacy. Yeah, we live that by life, last of a dying breed. And we throw a bread, you could tell from our pedigree. Bring your dog for training, but we treat him on like therapy. We do this for the Lord, dog. It's all about the legacy. It go. It's by life to the afterlife. It's by life, ayy. Yeah, we live that by life, last of a dying breed. And we throw a bread, you could tell from our pedigree. Bring your dog for training, but we treat him on like therapy. We do this for the Lord, dog. It's all about the legacy. Yeah, we live that by life, last of a dying breed. And we throw a bread, you could tell from our pedigree. Bring your dog for training, but we treat him on like therapy. We do this for the Lord, dog. It's all about the legacy. It go. It's by life to the afterlife. It's by life, ayy. Yeah, we live that by life, last of a dying breed. And we throw a bread, you could tell from our pedigree. Bring your dog for training, but we treat him on like therapy. We do this for the Lord, dog. It's all about the legacy. Yeah, we live that by life, last of a dying breed. And we throw a bread, you could tell from our pedigree. Bring your dog for training, but we treat him on like therapy. We do this for the Lord, dog. It's all about the legacy. It go.
Check, mic 1 2, check, mic 1 2. Check, mic 1 2. We live. Welcome to another episode of Let Your Dog Talk. I'm your host, Eric Gonzalez, with the infamous Ann and my 4-day companion, K9 Judah. All right, guys, we're gonna be dealing with. We live? So take care of that, because they're gonna get rowdy now. Hope all is well, guys. Today we're gonna be a little bit different how we're dealing with this episode, and that I had several questions brought to my attention during this past week, and so I'm gonna convey our method of how we do certain things here under the Bite Life regimen here. So, Judah, Mark, it's your good boy. Guys, remember, you guys that are tuning in by way of Instagram, you're not going to see the full setup. You're not going to be able to see Judah in his performances or what have you, if I have him doing it. But if you choose to do so, make sure you tune in to Let Your Dog Talk on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, for the full setup. All right, so we're going to be answering a few questions. I think we had a few questions this week by a Swahili K9, Swahili underscore K9. Anybody choosing to follow them on Instagram? They had a few questions. Back. And sometimes what happens is people usually want to know exactly what is it that a specific camp or organization or institution or what have you, what do they do for their day-to-day dealings when it comes to their four-legged companions? What type of exercise regimen, what type of foods or what have you. So I'm going to be addressing a couple of things or why we do what we do, and hopefully it'll help you all out there that are endeavoring to better your situation, your camp, or what have you. All right, so here we go. So one of the questions that was asked, we were asked about, forgive me, I got my reading glasses on. Obviously you see the gray hairs, a little bit of wisdom, and so my reading glasses must come on to convey some wisdom here. So here we go. We're dealing with some of the questions that was brought to our attention throughout this week. I know Swahili Canine was one of them. And so if there's any other questions that you have, feel free to reach out to us. We'll definitely be looking forward to assisting you all with the information that we have here. So when it comes to the food, some of the questions that was asked had to do with dietary intake. What is it that we feed our dog as far as on a day-to-day basis? What do we as far as raw versus dry kibble or what have you, food refusal, what have you. So we have a couple of questions pertaining to food in general. So we'll be addressing that. Now, I've been in the industry for many, many years. I've tried many foods throughout the years, and I'm gonna just convey to you what I believe is some of the best options for you. And again, there's a lot of good food out there. It's not to say that what we use is the all in all. There's a lot of good options out there. Budget plays a factor on the decisions that you choose as far as your dog is concerned. And so I have a camp that I deal with personal dogs that are held at a high esteem, as well as dogs that are abandoned maybe or what have you. And so their diet may not consist of the same quality, let's say, of a kibble. It's important to understand, first and foremost, that the dogs are canines, carnivores, are carnivores. And thus, a dog being a carnivore, it's important that it requires a specific diet. One of the problems we have with dry dog food is that even though it conveys meaty substances such as a chicken flavor, a beef flavor, a lamb flavor, some of the more common ones, buffalo here and there, what have you, understand that a lot of that food is, in many of those ingredients, there's no actual protein meat in the food. Now, there are exceptions, but the majority of the food does not have the actual content of the meat that the bag is promoting. One of the things to remember, or let me enlighten you on something. Many years ago, there was a grain-based ingredient, again, which was grain, and a lot of dogs were getting sick during the consumption of constant grain. Mind you, dogs are carnivores; they're not vegetarians. So being a carnivore is beneficial for the animal to obtain protein by way of meat, in which it was intended to consume, and its teeth equipped to tear. So what they did in the industry is they started adding grain, but after many years of bad reports, the conclusion was that a lot of dogs were dying because of the grain-based diet. So what the industry wound up doing was they wound up removing the grain, and they added a chickpea. The chickpea being a better option in that the chickpea sustained a lot of protein. The problem with the chickpea, which remains a factor today, is that it's still not the protein in question that's beneficial for the dog. The dog is required to consume meat. But what they did was, and the reason they get away with it is because what they do is they add flavors to the food, and for example, a broth. So you'll take chicken, you'll boil it, but instead of giving the dog the chicken, you'll give the dog the broth, the water base, or what have you. So it is a flavor-based chicken, therefore they're not lying, but they're not giving the dog what the dog actually needs. If anything, they're giving the dog a residual form of what they should be giving the animal by just giving the dog the flavor rather than the actual substance of the meat. Right? That's very important. So most of your foods, especially foods that you can find very commonly, very cheap, you have a lot of corn-based fillers, and corn is known not to be very nutritious. So it's important to understand that when you're dealing with food, when you know these things, there's always options to compensate for the difference. For example, I like to add meat periodically, or let's say on a weekly basis. The whole camp gets like raw meat. Now, raw meat could get expensive, but I'm not one to get a box and just consume it just from one dog. If they're all can benefit from it, I'm going to definitely share with them. That's what I commonly do. But you want to definitely add an actual meat-based product to your dog's diet. Again, they're carnivores. As far as the corn, having mentioned the corn is a filler. The lighter the grain, the more corn the food possibly has, therefore less nutrition, thus requiring a lot more as far as the ratio is concerned, rather than if the dog was eating a higher quality food. Traditionally, the darker the grain, the more healthier it is. All right? The darker the grain, the more healthy it is. The lighter the grain, the more unhealthy the food is. So keep that in mind when you're, in your journey of deciding what type of food you should get for the animal. And food can be very, very dangerous depending on different factors. In every living organism, there's what you call a lectin. A lectin is a protein molecule that either complements the animal or it'll be detrimental. For example, like me, I'm a certain blood type. My blood type requires, let's say, a vegetarian blood type. So if I consume a lot of meat, I'm actually doing more harm to myself than if I was eating according to what my blood type has informed me of what I should be eating. Dogs are very similar in type in that the dog, has a certain makeup that requires a specific type of diet, and failure to give it to that, understand that the dog may not give you the years that you would desire the dog to give you in the event you was giving the dog the food that it should have been consuming. So wisdom would say if you want a dry-based diet, try to add meat at least on a weekly basis. I know breeders that are very successful, those that add meat on a daily basis have better, healthier puppies in the long run. They may do a grain base or a dry food base throughout the day, and then at nighttime you want to give the dog that protein. The difference between the carbs and the protein factor when it's determining how to feed them. If you're gonna do a carb-based diet, which I usually say the dry food, even though it promotes protein, it promotes a falsified realm of protein in that it does more like the chickpea rather than the actual meat. It's important to understand that the food that I give it from a carb-based perspective will be more, I would look at it, the dry food will be considered my daily carb. And so remember, what is carb? Carb is an energy booster. It kind of gives you energy. And your protein, which is preferably given at nighttime, the protein should be given or issued at nighttime so that it can restore the muscle breakdown that occurred throughout the days, throughout the dog's performance throughout the day. In other words, we're going to give the dog carbs throughout the day for energy, and then fuel the muscles that were broken down through all that work by giving the dog protein. So if you can, I tell people this often, I got a cat. It's more difficult for a person when you have masses of amount of animals versus when you got 1 or 2 dogs at home. You want to treat them the best you can with the best foods. You want to make sure to, if you can, if you're going to give it a dry-based food, make sure that you add meat. And if you do it on a daily basis, that's cool. We do it here primarily on a weekly basis. We'll get a case of raw chicken or what have you, and we'll issue them raw chicken. Now remember, they're carnivores by nature, so raw is how they will consume it in the wild, in nature. They will not get the food, cook it, and then consume it. The difference between eating food that's already cooked, now mind you, contingent there's no bone, it's okay, you can get away with it. But when it comes to Judah, stand, circle, Down. That is tail in my face. Thank you. Appreciate you, buddy. High five. Good. That's a good bait. Where was I? So when we're dealing with the food, when you're dealing with chicken or steak or what have you, anything pertaining bone, you want to make sure it's raw and it's not cooked. If you cook it, it brittles. All right. When you cook bone, it brittles, and so what happens is the bone actually brittles to the point that it becomes like sharp knives. And so what happens is when the dog is consuming it, you don't see nothing immediately, but you may find the dog pooping blood in the stool, and it's usually because of the consumption of the bones, which is actually equivalent to consuming blades because of the heat that the bone received in the cooking stages. It actually causes it to turn into like little sharp knives or blades or what have you. And so as it's consuming it, it's actually cutting the dog internally, and therefore the results of blood in the stool following such a diet, which can be seen within an immediate stool cycle and or several thereafter. So keep that in mind. Try to avoid feeding your dogs cooked bone to avoid such issues. So we do not encourage that. To each his own, but as a professional, I would tell you with all the experience, all the years of experience that I have, I would highly suggest stay away from cooked bones, but bone in the raw state would be good. Now there's some concerns about, but what about what is it that the dogs usually have? They have that chicken has what is the common what is the common factor for chicken? What is the salmonella? So salmonella is usually a concern. There's some arguments about that, but the makeup of the animal doesn't allow such issues become a problem, because they're bred. I mean, they're created to consume stuff like that. They've been known to eat old stuff that's been out there. Nothing happens to them. It's more of a delicate situation when it comes to the consumption of a salmonella infested diet or food, which will affect the human a lot more quicker. So I'm not a scientist. I can't really go into those details. However, I've never had a problem allowing my dogs to consume chicken in a raw state, as far as having to rush an animal because of salmonella or anything like that. Matter of fact, I don't know any personal cases of any breeders or what have you that have a concern where, hey, I took my dog to the vet, the conclusion was salmonella. And I know a lot of people that believe in raw and raw only. All right, so when it comes to the kibble and when it comes to the kibble diet versus the raw, if you can afford a full raw diet, that'll be great. If you're gonna get a dry base, which I currently do use a dry base, and I don't work for nobody or anything like that, I'm not getting no kickbacks. I'm just telling you what I prefer. And after so many years of trying so many different foods throughout the year, my primary canine, like my demo dog, what have you, like my family, personal friend in the family who eat, I have them on a Victor diet, blue/greenback. Some people say it's blue, some people say it's green, depending how you see it. But the Victor food, it's a very dark grain, and it's the puppy/active dog formula is what I give my dogs. When I feed my dogs such diet, I always add water to the food. I rarely allow my dogs to eat a dry bowl, only because the dry bowl, a lot of times, by the way they consume it or what have you, a lot of times these dogs are fatigued because of the climate that we're in, being here in South Florida. A lot of times, they'll vacuum it and they'll choke and they'll throw it up or what have you. So to prevent that, I add water to it. Also, I add water because I do an evening ratio where, to prevent the dog from dehydrating throughout the night, I also add the water for that purpose. So you add the water for that purpose to prevent them from dehydrating throughout the night and prevent them from being dried up. Remember, in nature, they don't have water 24/7 right there. They may know where to go to get it, like the local pond or what have you, out there in the woods, the stream or whatever, but it's not necessarily right there in their actual den. Remember, they're den-oriented creatures. They can take their food to the den, but they rarely can take water or anything like that, because water is consumed momentarily at the moment, and it's irrefutable. No way they can do it. But if they need water, they'll go and they'll hunt, they'll grab the water, as needed and when they need it. As far as the The water, you want to make sure you give them water on a fluent basis. Remember, take your environment into consideration, the climate or what have you. One of the things that I found out throughout the years is, and through trial and error and actually experiencing it, if your dog has an issue with the potty training situation, you're trying to control that, control the water, and when you do give the water, try to give the water a substantial amount of water prior to going out on a walk, because it'll stimulate the valves for pooping or what have you, which can help you. Once you understand that, you can manipulate that, you'll be a lot more successful with your potty training situations, as you learn how to feed your animal, with the food and the water, when or what have you. Now, even though I add water to the food, you do want to have a ratio of water, in the designated area. Some dogs, because of certain temperaments, you may even want to control the water because of the tenacity that the dog may bring to the table. Not the case with all dogs, but in the event you have a tenacious animal, you want to make sure that not only the food, but the water is also controlled. Any questions on that? You good? Okay, cool. So the hand is okay. The hand has a dog of its own, and so sometimes a question may pop up periodically, so I may take time just to Judah, you got any questions? Good? All right, cool. He has no questions either.
I actually have one question.
One question, go ahead. So the hand has a question. Okay, cool. Okay, so he's asking me about salmon. Salmon is okay. Remember, in the wild, you have the wolf, and the wolf is known to have consumed salmon. Me personally, and it could have been just the specific dogs that I've had. When it comes to fish base, I used to add mackerel to my diet periodically. I find that when I do it on a daily basis, it wasn't the best outcome. Doesn't mean that it's not good for them. The amino acids and the oil, fish oils and all that is good for them. They're coached and everything. So, when you're zealous and you're learning and you're trying all these things, it's like, okay, this is working, but this is not working. And so what I find is there's certain things, like in the wild, I would try to mimic. So what is it that I would try to mimic? I would try to mimic, is it realistic that a wolf will consume fish daily? No, not necessarily. So I would do it mainly like on a weekly basis or what have you. Maybe you can get some sardines, very inexpensive at the supermarket, Walmart or what have you. Get sardines, get jack mackerel, what have you. And mind you, a lot of those are like $1, $1.50 a can, and it's not something that I would recommend on a daily basis. If you were to ask me what would I recommend on a daily basis, it would be more meaty substance with bone. Not necessarily, like even liver. I wouldn't do liver every day, even though it's part of the animal, and the animals will consume it. But again, trial and error, what I find even with liver, like the fish, a consumption of it daily sometimes can fall the wrong way and cause them to look a little sick. Not that they are sick, because remember, what you consume is what you're going to release. If you're going to consume a bag of corn-based food, yellow, the poop is going to come out yellow and runny most likely. It doesn't mean that the food, or that it's necessarily that they're sick. They're just releasing what they're consuming. That's why I like the dark grain-based food, especially the Victor. The dog, the stool actually comes out very hard and very dark, like the food, like the color of the food. And so I like it. I like the outcome. I like the substance that it gives them, what have you. But even then, I add to it. I may add, like what I do in many instances, I'll buy a tube of ground beef. You got $5, $10, $20, tubes of ground beef over there in Walmart. What I do is when I buy such tube, I'll chop it up in slices before it gets frozen. I'll take each slice, I'll put them in a sandwich bag, and then I'll freeze them. And then as I'm gonna feed my specific dog, like Judah, BJ is baby Judah. So we got a baby Judah coming up behind the scenes. So we'll feed Judah, we'll feed baby Judah, BJ. We'll feed him and maybe one or two other dogs. We'll feed them an exclusive diet. That's a more expensive diet, but those are the babies of the house that you want to care for. So you want to do things like that. So I'm always looking how to create, some form of addition to the nutrients or what have you that they say are good for them. And again, a lot of it is trial and error. You're looking at 20 plus years of experience of trying everything under the sun. You see what I'm saying? So what I find with the healthier foods, you give less of it, thus causing their organs to work less and not allowing the organs to work overtime. When you have to feed a dog a cheap-based food, and they have to consume a lot more for the same level of nutrients, like whereas a healthy cup of food would be 1 cup. and you get an unhealthy bag, and you feed them 5 cups, 7 cups, depending on the nutritional factor, it puts a lot of wear and tear on the animal. And just like us, we get older, our organs slow down or what have you. We do what we can to keep it, flowing healthy. You're actually very proficient with that type of knowledge, being that you're a holistic individual. You know what I'm saying? So it's the same principle.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? That being said, I mean, did we answer the question?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, pretty much. Some dogs, they or in the wild, like a wolf. Wild.
Right.
Get fed every single day.
Right. So that being said, that's very important, because one of the things that we do, and Judah can attest to this, we fast our dogs often. You know what I'm saying? Like on a weekly basis. You know what I'm saying? We might fast the dog for just the day. One of the things when we fast our dog, we don't go out of our way to overfeed the dog the next day just because it was fasting. The reason we do that is because, as you mentioned, in nature, it's part of their makeup. They don't have, a 5-course meal every day. They do not have that. They'll eat, they'll hunt, what have you. Sometimes they're successful, sometimes they're not. And some of the most healthiest dogs, believe it or not, are those that are eating what they're supposed to be eating and not in excess, where they're lean and they can cover more territory, what have you, and they're not like that couch potato type of appear. You see what I'm saying? You have dogs that appear to look like a couch potato. Obviously, that's not nature. That's not natural. Now, there are some breeds out there that require that because of certain specifics, certain likes or what have you, like the little English bulldogs, and you got these little exotic bullies or what have you. You have a lot of dogs that are very, massive for their body structure. That's something else. That's a cosmetic / genetic breeding makeup for specific likes or what have you. But in reality, the healthier dogs are those that are lean. When you're dealing with a working dog, such as a police dog or what have you, you want a working dog that's lean, that can get the job done, that can run further, that can run faster, what have you. So you don't want a dog that's bloated constantly for such performance. So again, all of that play the fact as to what foods or what have you should be. Again, salmon, as it all from the question that salmon is good, I just wouldn't do it every day. Liver is good, I wouldn't do it every day. What do I find that the animals in nature would normally consume? What normally on a daily basis, let's say the dog had an agenda, a laid out agenda of its daily consumption, it would primarily consist of meat with bone. Bone would definitely be a factor. A lot of times when a dog is consuming a lot of bone, what you may see is a lot of chalky type stool, because the dog is consuming the bone. But even in the bone, there's a lot of nutrients and things like that. So you're getting the meat, the protein, you're getting calcium from the bones or what have you. So I mean, at the end of the day, I believe he created everything perfect. And what we've done as humans is come in and try to change things up when it comes to like the grains and the chickpeas. And we're doing everything we can for money purposes, for money gain, for financial gain, but it's actually hurting the animal, in which is intended to be our companion at times, give up their life for us based on the fact that we take them for such privileges, security, therapy, this, that, or whatever. So when you have an animal that's so valuable to you, it's important to make sure that you're giving them the proper diet. Fui! Got a lot of young puppies that are lacking comprehension and understanding. That being said, is there any other questions about the salmon or anything like that? You got that? All right, cool. Well, listen, I actually have several other questions lined up. However, I didn't even realize the time just went by just that quick, and we only have a couple of minutes. And therefore, what we're gonna do is we're gonna keep it interesting by keeping you guessing as to where we're gonna go next with it. Again, we haven't answered all the questions pertaining to the food or what have you. As we come back, we'll be dealing with how to create an athletic build on an animal, if at all the genetics are there, but some type of dietary insights or what have you, or conditioning drills that we could be going through, different types of variable rewards that we can be issuing these animals when they perform for us accordingly. Luring food, the power of luring food or what have you, clickers and stuff like that, a lot of the clickers. So these are some of the questions that I actually wanted to go through today, or kind of answer, as far as how Bite Life and we here at Let Your Dog Talk, how we do things. Again, our methods or what have you is not the all in all, It's just to give you an inside scoop, give you a peek into our closet so you can see more or less how we do what we do. All right, guys? Anyway, listen, I hope the information was informative pertaining food. I actually want to talk a little bit more about other things, as you can see, but at the end of the day, it turned out to be, an episode of food or what have you, as to what would be the proper diet or what have you, the difference between kibbles and raw. So I know a lot was kind of said, kind of fast, but I trust that whatever we said, if you can take but one thing with you, we did our job. We made our point, and we've made you a better owner, handler, and or canine enthusiast in the industry. All right, guys, thank you. We look forward to seeing you guys next week. And if there's any questions, please feel free. You got any training issues, any concerns pertaining your four-legged companion, make sure you hit us, you DM us, you message us, so that following episodes to come, we would definitely address those as we go on further. All right, guys? So, hey, we appreciate you. Thank you. And looking forward to doing it again soon.